The subject is what is my relation with the universe and the cosmic entity. Nirgun Brahma is the supreme rank of Brahma, and this status is attained when consciousness is not under the qualifying influence of Prakriti. Sagun Brahma, the qualified supreme entity, is under the qualifying influence of Prakriti. Sagun Brahma is also called Bhagavan. Consciousness Purusha, on attaining freedom from the bondage of the qualifying influence of Prakriti, acquires the supreme rank and has the status of Nirguna, non-qualified consciousness. Atma or unit consciousness being a multiple of consciousness in the qualified consciousness, Atma or unit consciousness being a multiple of consciousness in the qualified supreme entity is also a multiple of Bhagavan. Hence, unit consciousness is also Bhagavan, and on being released from the bondage of Prakriti, it merges in Nirguna to attain the supreme rank. In the previous chapter, it was explained that the human being's feeling of I is not Atma or unit consciousness. The knowledge of existence or the feeling of I is different from unit consciousness. It has also been explained that this feeling of I is only a metamorphosed projection of unit consciousness. Hence, the human being's I entity is not Bhagavan. It is a changed or assumed form of Bhagavan. For example, a person called Ram while acting as Shahjahan on the stage will be called Shahjahan and not Ram. Ram playing the role of Shahjahan will not be the real personality of Ram. It will be only a changed or assumed personality, and as long as he continues to act that role, he will be called Shahjahan and not Ram. Similarly, as long as the feeling of I is the person's identity, the person will be different from his or her Atma or Bhagavan, and the person with this feeling of I will remain only a changed or assumed form of unit consciousness, Atma. It would thus be seen that it is a person's feeling of I which keeps the person away from his or her unit consciousness. In fact, it is this feeling of I which makes a human being a different entity from Bhagavan. On the conclusion of the drama in which Ram played the role of Shahjahan, he reverts back to his original personality and is called Ram. In the same way, on release from this feeling of I, the changed or assumed form of unit consciousness ceases to exist, and unit consciousness Atma becomes Nirguna, non-qualified, as this assumed form comes about only as a result of the qualifying influence of Prakriti. The termination of this changed or assumed form of unit consciousness means freedom from the bondage of Prakriti. It is hence the feeling of I in human consciousness, in human beings, which creates the difference between people and their unit consciousness. In reality, it is the feeling of I which keeps the unit consciousness or Atma from attaining the supreme rank. A human being's feelings of I is only metamorphosed unit consciousness. Yet, this entity of I is different from unit consciousness or Bhagavan. And so, it is not unit consciousness that can be held responsible for performance of actions or experiencing their consequences as long as the actions are performed by that I. For instance, the consequences of the actions performed by Ram on the stage in the changed role of Shahjahan do not affect Ram. It would be assumed that Shahjahan only will be affected, as the doer of the act is the assumed personality and not Ram in the capacity of his original personality. Ram in his original capacity would only witness all that the assumed form does or experiences. Similarly, it is the projected or changed form of I which acts and also experiences the results of all actions. The unit consciousness neither performs any actions nor experiences any results. It only witnesses the actions and also the results thereof. In the first chapter, it was said that unit consciousness is the knowing entity. It can be appreciated as the knowing or witnessing entity only, and a human being's feeling of I is the other entity which creates in humans the knowledge of existence and also establishes their existence. Unit consciousness always remains a witnessing entity, and any action performed by the I entity has no effect on it. A witnessing or knowing entity need not be the performer of any actions, and hence the status of unit consciousness remains unchanged as witnessing entity only. Only the one who sows shall reap. Hence, only the entity termed as the feeling of I will experience the results of all actions, as this feeling is the originator of all actions. The witnessing entity or the knowing entity remains only a spectator without experiencing any results. As it does not work, for example, Ram who witnesses a football match will never get any credit for winning the match. Only the player Shyam will be called the winner. It is the actual player Shyam who will lose the game, and he alone will feel fatigues as a result of his playing. Rama, who is only a spectator, will neither win nor lose, nor will he feel exhausted and tired. Ram, the spectator, will witness the play and also the result of the actions. He will only know the result of the match and see Shyam exhausted as a result of his playing the game. Similarly, unit consciousness or Atma is a spectator, witnessing all the actions performed by human beings and the results experienced by them. It does not perform any action and hence does not experience any result. Unit consciousness or Atma is only a witnessing force, the all-knowing entity. The human being's feeling of I is Buddhi Tattva. This I gives the idea of the knowledge of existence. It does not give any idea of performing an action. Mere feeling of existence does not indicate that I performs any action, and so it is not Buddhi Tattva which acts. It has been said in the first chapter that Aham Tattva, which comes into being as a result of the qualifying influence of Prakriti on Buddhi Tattva, is the part of mind that works. Aham Tattva, ego, is not Buddhi Tattva. As this former is formed from the later, it is a cruder manifestation of Buddhi Tattva. It is Aham Tattva, ego, which works, and it is the only which experiences the results of action. Buddhi Tattva, which is a distinctly separate entity from Aham Tattva and is merely pure feeling of I, does not perform any action and hence should not experience the result of actions. On serious reflection, however, no action appears possible without the feeling of I or the knowledge of existence being there, or who else would make Aham Tattva work? It is the feeling of I and the knowledge of existence which inspires Aham Tattva to work. Thus it is seen that Buddhi Tattva does not actually perform any action. Yet it is because of the knowledge of existence and feeling of I provided by it that a person is able to work through his or her Aham Tattva. The feeling of I is therefore related to the performance of actions and in this way related to the results of actions also. To illustrate this, we can take an example of two landlords whose dispute results in the free fighting of their people. As a result of this fight, the actual fighters, that is the landlord, men will be injured or may even die, but the landlords will remain apparently unaffected. Yet the landlords are responsible for the fight as it was started through their instigating the people. Hence, apparently the person who works is directly affected, but in fact the landlords are the persons who will indirectly experience the results of the fight among their men. They alone will be the winners or losers. Similarly, Buddhi Tattva is also indirectly related to the results of actions performed by Aham Tattva. Although the actual performer of actions is Aham Tattva, which apparently bears the consequences of actions. The Chitta comes into being as a result of the qualifying influence of the static principle of Prakriti on Aham Tattva was explained in the first chapter. It is thus Aham Tattva which manifests itself in a cruder form as Chitta. The results of actions performed by Aham Tattva are formed in Chitta. It was explained in detail in the first chapter that Chitta assumed the form of the action of Buddhi Tattva and Aham Tattva with the help of the 10 organs, Indriyas. For instance, Chitta itself has to become like a book in order to enable Aham Tattva to see a book. The same applies in order to listen to a sound. Chitta is a crude manifestation of Aham Tattva, which itself is a manifestation of Buddhi Tattva. Chitta hence is the crudest portion of Buddhi Tattva and is not capable of independent action. Any independent action by a conscious mind entity is not tolerated by Prakriti, which tries to go against each of person's independent actions. As the reflection of consciousness is complete in human beings, they are able to realize their bondage and they try to defy the authority of Prakriti. In this effort to overcome the influence of Prakriti, human beings work against her designs, and Prakriti in her turn goes against human beings' effort in order to maintain her domination over them. A person's actions therefore are inspired by his or her consciousness in order to break away from the bondage of Prakriti, and the results that they experience are the reactions inflicted by Prakriti to keep them under bondage. Let us now see how an action is executed and why one has to bear the consequences in the form of reaction. Every action originates in and is performed by the mind, that is by its 3 components, Buddhi Tattva, Aham Tattva and Chitta. It was explained earlier that Chitta has to take the form or become like the result of any action performed by a human being. This would mean that Chitta leaves its normal form and is metamorphosed into the form of the result of an action. For instance, Chitta has to become a book to be able to see a book. A person's mind has to leave its normal form and become deformed in order to complete the execution of an action. The creation and the existence of mind are due to the influence of Prakriti or on consciousness, and when consciousness disrupts the normal status of mind by inspiring it to work, it is not tolerated by Prakriti. Prakriti, being the dominating factor, causes a reaction to every action and brings the mind back to its former status. This is called Karma Phal. Thus, Karma Phal is a manifestation of Buddhi Tattva. Buddhi Tattva and the feeling of I are the same entity. It is therefore a human being's feeling of I only which on becoming crude is transformed into Chitta. We have seen that a book can only be seen when Chitta becomes like the book. As Chitta is a transformation of the feeling of I, it is in fact a human being's feeling of I which becomes like a book, and it is not a book that one sees. It is one's own transformed self that one sees as a book. It is that transformed feeling of I, known as chitta, which on grasping the auditory vibration of the nerves creating form, Rup Tanmatra, becomes a book itself. To hear a sound, one has to become sound itself. Thus, human beings themselves become the result of their actions, and whatever one sees, feels, hears, touches, or smells is their own feeling of I or their own transformed self. Buddhi Tattva gives the inspiration to work. Aham Tattva executes the act, and Chitta has to become the result of the execution. Buddhi Tattva, Aham Tattva, and Chitta constitute the mind, and so it is the mind that works. It is the mind which will bear the consequences. The one who sows that shall reap. Unit consciousness, Atma, is beyond the scope of mind, and hence it neither works nor bears the consequences. It only remains a spectator in the human body. Consciousness, Purusha, and its qualifying principle, Prakriti, are independent of the influence of each other in the non-qualified supreme entity, Nirguna, where consciousness holds the supreme rank, while in the qualified supreme entity, Sagun Brahma, consciousness, Purusha, is under the bondage of Prakriti, which results in the creation of the universe according to the designs of Prakriti. The process or reaction which restores mind to its original form, the deformity being due to the actions of mind, is experienced as karma for the result of actions. The intensity with which an action is performed and thus deformed, the mind will be exhibited to the same extent in the reaction or karma phala. The pressure implies against Prakriti in causing deformity in the mind will be made in order to restore mind to its normal form. For instance, a rubber ball pressed with a finger forms a depression, but on being released, it returns to its original or normal form. The finger will experience an equal and opposite force at the time of reaction. Here, the rubber ball is comparable to mind, and the finger to the human beings, I, entity that makes the mind work and thereby creates depression in it. Hence, one would feel the reaction of mind returning to its original form with the same amount of intensity as was implied in creating the depression. The intentions of Prakriti to restore the original form of mind and also to punish the I that inspired the mind to work are both achieved by this process of reaction. According to the rules of Prakriti, the nature of mind is to come back to its normal form by reacting to every action. Hence, human beings have to bear the consequences of any type of work as reaction, karma phala. According to the law of Prakriti, a person will experience the reaction to all their deeds, whether good or evil. For instance, if a person steals and causes suffering to the person whose things are stolen, the first person will create a distortion in his or her mind by using his or her faculty of inflicting pain. The mind will react to remove this distortion, and the person inflicting pain will experience an equal amount of pain in mental measure as a result of this reaction. Similarly, if people by their deeds give happiness to others, they will, as a result of mind's reaction, attempting to come back to its normal form, experience an equal amount of happiness. This is because, according to the laws of Prakriti, one will experience an equal and opposite reaction in the process of mind regaining its normal form. Thus, Prakriti makes a human being bear the consequences, karma phala, of all his or her actions with the help of the instrument of mind created by Prakriti. And whatever a human being does, good or evil, they will have to experience a similar reaction, karma phala. No one can ever exist without doing some action or other. Even when sitting quietly, one is performing an action. The physical body may not be exerting itself, yet the ever active mind is not still. The mind, even without physical action, engages itself in action by thinking or imagining. A person may be thinking evil of someone, may even be planning to kill him, or may be thinking of evil something, may be thinking of ways and means of helping others in their distress. All this is action and does not need any physical exertion or movement. Even physical action is only a further projection of mental activity. It was explained earlier that all action is performed by mind and the 10 organs indriyas, which are only a further extension of chitta that translate mental actions into physical activity. All actions can be classified as physical or mental. Action performed by the mind with the help of the organs, indriyas, are physical, while those performed without their help by mind alone are mental actions. Both these actions will cause distortion in the mind, and as a result of the restoration of the mind to its normal state, they will cause a reaction which will have to be experienced. Hence, any action, whether mental or physical, will make the doer experience the reaction, karma phal. Fully reflected consciousness in human beings makes them realize their subjugation under the bondage of Prakriti. They do not want to continue in this position of slavery and hence work independently against Prakriti, who in turn keeps on inflicting punishment on them in the form of reactions to their actions. On this earth, human beings alone have fully reflected consciousness, and so no living beings except human beings can work independently. The